Thank you, Mr. Principal Deputy Speaker. I'm glad to be able to speak in support of our motion today, and I'm very glad to see that we have unanimity across the Assembly today. This is the second time, I think, in as many weeks that we've had to come to this Assembly to fight for public sector jobs to be retained in my constituency. As you well know, Mr. Principal Deputy Speaker, and has already been outlined by Ms McLaughlin and others, our constituency is one that faces a daily uphill struggle in terms of the economy. The very large numbers of people who are classed as being economically inactive, we're always at the wrong end of those types of league tables. These jobs in the Duncragan Road are good, well-paid jobs. Some of the people in there and some of the people in the other offices are actually married couples. The impact that that will have on their families and on our community is immense. It takes a special kind of cruelty to announce these jobs at the end of November, these job losses at the end of November, when people are facing in to the Christmas period. But it's nothing that we wouldn't expect from a Tory government, who seem to be hell-bent on lowering the size of the public sector, and they don't really care what impact that has, not only on the people who work in the public sector, but on the level and standard of service that provides to the community. Because nobody can tell me, Mr. Principal Deputy Speaker, that this will improve the service to the public out there. And everybody in this House has had dealings with services that have gone to England before. People have talked already about the tax credits. It is just a nightmare to try and get through that system and try and get a positive outcome for constituents. But, you know, it is a bit of a joke, Mr. Principal Deputy Speaker, when this Tory government is residing over a HMRC that has seen £70 billion a year lost to the Exchequer in terms of tax evasion, and another £50 billion a year in terms of tax avoidance. I think some people in that particular cabinet aren't too worried about that, because many of their friends and supporters are involved very seriously in those kinds of activities. But it is Northern Ireland that has been affected particularly by this announcement, and people will know I have no problem criticising the executive when I think this executive is wrong. But this is an affront to local democracy. Our ministers weren't even told. We received a letter the day after the staff were told. And, you know, this nonsense about this being a voluntary exit scheme, there's nothing voluntary about it. If I could just read from a letter from somebody called Dorothy Brown that I received. She said that we have not made a formal decision to close any of these offices. And about 3 lines down, what she says is, what we are doing is signalling that we do not believe that there is a long-term future for these offices. That's in the same paragraph. And I think this Assembly and our executive need to send a very clear message to Dorothy and her masters in the Tory cabinet that we will not accept this. That George Osborne can't go to Westminster, to the House of Commons, and tell everybody how great the economy is doing and things are on the up and we're all in this together one week, and then the next week announce job losses in Northern Ireland without even telling our executive, our democratically elected Assembly and executive in this part of the world. So, Mr. Principal Deputy Speaker, I am very glad that all the parties in this Assembly. Yes.
Now, just on the point of how the staff have been treated by HMRC, the member will recall that just a short number of years ago, Vodafone, which owed a tax bill of £8 billion, were excused from paying £5 billion of that. Now, if you compare that to the way that these employees have been treated, they may be well paid, but they're not highly paid. And the savings that are going to be made here, if you can call them savings by HMRC, are only a drop in the ocean compared to the amount of tax that is being unclaimed by HMRC.
Well, Mr Bradley is spot on. It's an absolute nonsense to suggest that this is any kind of a saving. What we need to do is invest in HMRC, invest in the people who've developed these skills over years and years and years, to try and go after the fat cats and Vodafone and the former Tory party chairman, and go after those people for the money that they owe the public purse and they owe all the people around here that pay taxes. So I would implore, Mr Principal Deputy Speaker, that we continue this battle, that this executive and this assembly unite like we did around the DVA jobs in Coleraine, and send a very clear message to Whitehall that we will not accept your cuts to our public service, that we are fighting a big enough battle and trying to develop jobs and develop the economy in this part of the world, and we just refuse to accept what you're trying to do, and we will not take sitting down diktats from Whitehall that just ignore the democratic process in this part of the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr Danny Kennedy.